Now to the question of whether today's attacks will in any way impact U.S. policy on Syria. Jen Psaki is the State Department spokesperson. She joined me moments ago from Washington. Jen Psaki, State Department spokeswoman, thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
On a horrific day for Syria, I'm sure you've seen some of the amateur footage, some of the testimony coming out of that country with row upon row of dead bodies with no obvious sign of external trauma, and the suspicion at this point that this is a chemical attack. What is the reaction of the United States government?
Well, thank you for the question. We are deeply concerned by reports that hundreds of civilians have been killed by alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria. The UN investigative team is on the ground now, as you know, and we have called for that team to have access to be able to interview people, to be able to look at events on the ground and look into what happened here. If there's nothing to hide, there's no reason the Syrian regime should hold back from allowing this team from unfettered access, and that's certainly what we're calling for publicly and privately.
And if the evidence does show this is indeed a chemical attack, and we're looking at a much larger scale than any previous suspected chemical attacks, what will the United States do then?
Well, I don't want to look into a crystal ball, but as you know, the UN will be meeting in the next 24 hours to certainly discuss these allegations and events on the ground in Syria, and we will be watching this closely. The President has been clear, the Secretary has been clear that the use of chemical weapons is absolutely unacceptable, and that's why we've been so strong in calling for unfettered access for the investigative team to get to the bottom of what's happened here.
So in what way would it be a game changer for the United States?
Well, as you know, when the President made the announcement just a few months ago that the red line had been crossed, that we had expanded our scale and scope of aid, he made clear that all options remain on the table, barring boots on the ground. Those discussions are ongoing. I can't predict what will be the outcome here. These are allegations, these are reports, but we don't have any corroborated evidence of the use yet. That's why we want the UN to be able to have access to the ground and unfettered access.
So all options barring boots on the ground, so no direct military intervention with U.S. boots on the ground. Is that the case?
That is right. We've been clear that boots on the ground is not part of the options being considered, but all options remain on the table. I'm not going to outline those here, but that's certainly a discussion that continues with the President and the national security team.
Well, you know, we keep talking about chemical weapons, but as you know, Jen, we're looking at more than 100,000 people killed. At what point does it become a humanitarian imperative for countries like the U.S. and its allies to act to stop the carnage? History has taught us one thing, and that's if you don't act when carnage unfolds in a country like Rwanda or elsewhere, it continues. So when will the U.S. feel that this is an imperative?
The events on the ground are horrific, whether it's chemical weapons use or whether it's just the death of tens of thousands of civilians at the hands of the brutal Assad regime. We've been outraged by that. That's why we have provided more humanitarian aid than any other country in the world. That's why we've continued to increase our aid and the kinds of aid we're providing. Those discussions will continue, and certainly events on the ground are part of the discussion moving forward and what steps will be taken by the government.
And what about Secretary Kerry? I mean, having heard or seen, I'm sure, some of this video material that has come out, what has been the reaction of the Secretary, and has this changed his plans in any way with regards to Syria?
Well, the Secretary feels very strongly that these reports and any reports of chemical weapons use should be looked into as quickly as possible. The UN team is on the ground. There's no reason that they shouldn't have access. They shouldn't be able to be doing the reporting that they need to do. The Secretary wakes up every day and is concerned and outraged by the brutality that has hit the Syrian people. That's why he's been so focused on this issue, working with his counterparts around the world. And this is something he will remain focused on in the days and weeks ahead.
Jen Psaki, thank you very much for joining us on CNN.
Thank you. My pleasure.